Coming to you from Alameda, California, from the comfortably zoned mobile studio, it is Ralph Zig Tycho.
Thank you, Paulie. How are you this week?
Doing well. Apparently, I'm energized, which I think is your way of saying, Paul, cut down on the caffeine, my bud.
Oh no, I don't tell you what to do and what to put in your body. But if you're shaking like a fish out of water, I may say something.
Yeah, no, I definitely look like I'm a little bit buzzed, but that's okay. That's how I get through, buddy. That's how I make it. It's good to see you. What's happening with you, man?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. I look forward to this every week. And you and I, we were talking off the air how we communicate so well. And it's so much fun when you have a communicator and you have someone to communicate with. So thank you again, Paul.
No, thank you. I appreciate you being there. You know, it's kibitzing. I want to make sure we're saying it right. Kibitzing.
That's exactly what we do. On every level, we just kibitz and we chat, we get it done. No one has an opinion. No one is opinionated. Let's put it that way. They have opinions, but no one cares whether or not they're in disagreement. We don't express that in any way. My guests are have been my colleagues in the Comfortably Zoned radio network for the most part. So this is a good transition and a good time to see our pretty faces. And I'm enjoying it, Paulie.
I'm glad you are. I'm glad you are. So I know later on today's show, we actually have Jack DeGraw. And I kept calling him Jack DeGrew. Jack DeGraw.
Right? Jack DeGraw. And I sent you a notice, a little, you asked, what about Jack DeGraw is interesting. Jack DeGraw, and you can go to YouTube and put in Jack DeGraw free throws. Jack DeGraw, I don't know if he broke the all-time record of consecutive free throws or what. He is skilled at that particular thing. He can just stand there and hits free throws all day, and he's got a recording of it, and he talks about it. But he's also a Yankee maven on the Comfortably Zoned network, and we're going to talk to him about a lot of things. So the state of the Yankees, the history of the Yankees. We both have memories that go back, not just what's going on today. We respect the idea of the golden age of baseball and why it was called the golden age. And one thing I'd like to get started with, Jack, is I think the most important streak in 5 consecutive World Series from 1949 to 1953 by the New York Yankees. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it year to year as time goes on. And I'm looking forward to that. But you know what I'd like to do this morning is kibitz with you, your word.
Okay.
Because
it's my word.
You're becoming an honorary Jew.
I am.
And if you think that's easy, you have another thing going. Because, you know, there are one thing about Jews, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. If you ever noticed that. But
I'm waiting for the punchline. I'm waiting for the punchline.
That's the punchline.
That's the punchline. Okay.
That is the punchline. It's the setup and the punchline at the same time. Norm Macdonald talked about the perfect joke. That may not be the perfect joke because you might throw in a little humor for it to be a joke. But if you think about it, Jews are in constant disagreement with each other, and they examined something from all sides. We Jews, you and I, Paulie. And it's best to do that so you can get a flow of conversation that includes everybody's opinion.
Right.
And that's what basically we do on the show. And that's what I do with you. And I'd like you to bear with me while I give you a little history of how Comfortably Zoned started, if you will. And I had been doing podcasts originally through the network that we met with the toxic owner, let's put it that way. And when I stopped providing content for them, I started just doing a podcast as many times a week as I pleased. And I enjoyed doing it just for doing its sake. And one day I realized, boy, this is for some reason boring me. So one of my friends said, why don't you make a network out of what you do? Get some people and get some podcasters or potential podcasters and do shows with them. Have them do shows with me on whatever interests them and whatever interests me, and combine that. And it started to work. And one day, I had an idea. I was going to get the star of all stars, in not just in podcasting, author. I wanted to talk to all the authors, baseball authors especially. And who do I start with? Was Peter Golenbach, who has written 10 New York Times bestsellers and 60 some odd books. So I thought, boy, this is a guy I could learn from and get something going on the show that is really professional. And what we started to do was the 3 books that he wrote that I was most interested in was Dynasty, about the Yankees, Bums, about the Brooklyn Dodgers, who were referred to in those days as bums. And I had recently read what turned out to be one of my 5 favorite books of all time, and it was The Forever Boys. And Peter did a book about a league that was started and ended in Florida, with participants being retired guys who still wanted to play, guys who were big stars, guys who were just regular players, but a league of people. I think there was 6 teams in it originally, and Peter happened to have been writing a book on just this subject and wanted to get with a team. And he ended up with the St. Petersburg team, and he followed them. He rode the buses. He just befriended people, and he wrote an excellent book. And the book was basically the worst thing you could do to a baseball player or a sports athlete professional is pull the uniform off them, force them to retire. And oftentimes nothing replaces the thrill they had in sports. And this league was meant to get a bunch of players together and and play ball. And Peter chronicled it in his book, and we talked about the book and the experience on many different podcasts. And he became a regular. Every Sunday night, he and I would talk. It wasn't always baseball. It wasn't always bums and Yankees. It was a lot of things. It was life. And Peter is, I can't say enough for him, because he made the network professional, and he drew listenership and people who wanted to be on his network. So I wanted to start with Peter Goldenbach. He got it all rolling. He made me feel like I was doing Comfortably Zoned network was a network. And sometimes, you just need a little self-confidence with stuff. You need to know it's working. And so Peter was tremendous. And from Peter, he introduced me to a fellow by the name of Ron Rabinovich. And Ron wrote a book based on his letters from Jackie. Ron was his dad introduced him to Ron. Start again. His dad introduced him at 10 years old to Jackie Robinson, because he was he knew him. He was a labor guy, a labor lawyer, and he got to know Jackie, and Jackie and him, as a 10-year-old, would exchange letters talking about everything. And Ron kept those letters all those years and published the book, Letters from Jackie. And Ron ended up being the heart of Comfortably Zoned, because we came on as together as co-hosts at times, because Ron was an incredibly interesting person. His dad was associated with John Kennedy and his brother Rob Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, not Robbie. But so he grew up with these people, and he got to see how campaigns worked. His dad was the campaign guy in Wisconsin, where they were from, and he led the network to many interesting stories. Unfortunately, Ron passed away, and this isn't necessarily a recap of all this. Isn't necessarily happy, because all of us started at an older age. I wanted people who had experience and who had knowledge, authors and stuff, who could look back upon what I consider the golden age of baseball, which to me was absolutely the thrill of my life. My grandfather took me to the first game that I ever went to in 1951. And it was at the Polo Grounds. And it was before Willie Mays got called up. And I was 4.5, 5. He taught me every player on every position. And then when he got called up, I saw the reconfiguration of the team. Bobby Thompson went to third. He had been playing center. Willie was now the center fielder. And I took all this in, and I took my grandfather's joy from this. And I saw what baseball did, and especially how his eyes lit up when Willie Mays came up or was in the field. And he gave me the passion. He passed it on to me. So the network, it has always been dedicated to the memory of Phil Niss, who passed away tragically, because anytime anybody dies, he was in his 80s, but it was a tragedy. Nobody lives long enough. And when somebody dies, an encyclopedia of knowledge dies with them. So the show, and every show, is dedicated to the memory of Phil Niss, my pop. And just wanted to interject that. And with that, I cut to the tragic part. Not only did Ron Rabinovich pass away, but another one of my colleagues on Comfortably Zoned was a fellow that wrote one of the forwards. Peter Golenbach wrote the other one to my book. The book I wrote with George Grimm. It's Comfortably Zoned in a Vat of Pine Tar. And there's Willie up in the corner playing stickball. To give you an idea of Willie's enthusiasm, he'd come home from a game and he played stickball in the park. Not in the park, we played in the park. He played on Euclid Avenue, or I can't think of the avenue. So right near the Polo Grounds where he lived, and he'd play stickball with the kids. Kids loved him, and he loved the kids. He was like a little boy. And Willie was and is just so terrific. And anyway, the present is George Grimm, the guy that I spoke about. He is struggling. He's got some heart valve problems. He's going in for some procedures, has been in, back and forth. Another person who's a regular on the show is Jerry Feidelberg. Jerry is in his 80s, and he's got some ongoing problems, as all of us do. And it's just sad to see me and my fellow podcasters and contributors age the way we do, and the way everybody does. So
I mean, when you look at it, look at all you guys spent a lot of years together and doing a lot of stuff, and now you're growing old together, just like they say, a good old married couple, we're going to grow old together. We're kind of doing that. We're kind of doing that with our best of friends, aren't we? We get to that age.
That is absolutely correct. And when Ronnie died, I thought, I can't do this anymore. Nothing's going to replace Ronnie. And I realized that I'm going to keep doing it in his honor and refer to him in his honor over the years. I just, when anyone gets sick, as in a married couple or whatever, you take it on. It's very depressing seeing the way seeing mortality, and not just mortality, what leads up to mortality. So I got to tell you, that's the difficult part. But staying in touch with these guys, lifelong friendships, always something to talk about. And you've seen, we've had many guests who come from the Comfortably Zoned Network and who will keep coming back. And that's heartening, but it's life.
Right.
And life isn't always easy. And accepting what life isn't always easy. But
Well, and
We go on.
that's why we were talking about what we were earlier today is that things are not getting easier, are they, Zig? Sometimes it gets a
Not
little bit harder, especially when you round that
no.
corner. When you're rounding
Uh,
third base and headed to home, sometimes things are you just got to dig in and go for it,
right.
right?
Well, and the whole idea, you don't want to head for home. you don't. You don't want to be called out. Um,
you don't want to keep going, keep going, keep going. Yeah, no, I gotcha.
yeah,
That's my
and
third base coach.
and sometimes I keep going personally and spiritually because of this podcast. It's now become a video podcast, so we can see the look in the eyes of our guests, and we run
Well,
videos and we run film. We're getting there. Paulie, let me look in your eye here. You put yourself on camera.
there you go. I'm
I
right there on you. So
Yeah,
that's why we're extending this invitation to anybody that's within an earshot of our voice. We want to help you make the transition from audio to video, and we can do that. Zig in the Zone and the Comfortably Zone Network can help you make that transition seamless. That's right, like a three finger fastball. It's just gonna zoom right across the plate. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm thinking that there are a number of podcasters who would, on Comfortably Zoned, who would love just this, to personalize a show and talk for the number one reason, it's cathartic to get the word out. I don't know if you've ever had a podcaster explain that to you or think of it in those terms, but it really is. It's cathartic just to say it. And that's what podcasting, video podcasting, plain podcasting, the satisfaction one gets after a completed show can't be topped. Could be topped with a pretty woman, not necessarily, or a pretty man if that's your thing. But you know what I mean. Just getting the word out there. And that's what Comfortably Zoned is all about. And that's what I'm going to help Paulie do to maybe get two or three people who are podcasters who come on occasionally who would like to have a show of with their own dream. It doesn't have to be just about baseball. It doesn't, and ours isn't. We've talked about other things. And I can't tell you how I've enjoyed our company and how you and I, Paul, and how I can't wait to really formally introduce it to my fellow podcasters and friends who aren't in podcasting might decide that, boy, I'd like to take a run at having my own show. And I could just say, Paulie, you are, and I've told you this many times, you have empathy, compassion, and skill. Now, without the first two things, all the skill in the world doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know if I
That's
can even
why.
walk and chew gum at this point because we're doing this. Hey, there goes the FedEx guy zooming by your mobile
Well,
studio.
whoa, whoa! The Wells Fargo wagon is a coming down the street. Oh, please let it be for me. That's from my favorite musical, Music Man.
Music
And
man.
I like to thank my mother. When we were kids, and this is an incidental based on that song, she never taught me to sing, believe it or not. But she did give me an appreciation for the Broadway stage. And that's one of the things about growing up in New York that I most, not most, I most appreciated my community of friends that I grew up with and the love of my parents, I have to say.
So
But the
my
love,
favorite one. My favorite song from The Music Man. Do you want to guess?
Um, Let me say,
It's probably one of the
um,
most popular ones.
well, how about the most beautiful one
Okay.
first? We'll change. It was a song that the Beatles had that um, Meredith Wilson, the creator of The Music Man, wrote, and I can't think of the name of it, but it is a beautiful song. If you want to, you've got your computer, and if you want to hit it and go to Meet the Beatles' first album, and they played that song. But how about if I take a guess because it was my favorite all time show?
But
Um,
it's from that movie. It's from The Music Man. That's what I was saying. Is well, guess what my favorite song is from The Music Man?
Tell me.
Well, my friend, you've got trouble.
Right here in River City, with the capital T and that rhymes with P and that stands for pool.
That's right.
Am
It
I
was all
correct?
about that damn bull table.
Absolutely. The damn and growing up in Iowa, there's nothing halfway about an Iowa way to greet you when we greet you like we never did before. You could be poor as a but you could come to the picnic. You could eat all you want, but make sure you bring the food. That's the Iowa way of doing it. And I learned a lot about the Midwest and um, their mores and how it differed from New York through that. You saw it as a movie, I saw it as a play. It, and Stubby K was in it. Um, my God, it was
So you
terrific.
you saw it you saw it
76
on stage. You saw it on
trombones led the
stage.
big parade with 110 clarinets close behind. They were followed by, and it was a story. It was about this traveling salesman who was a con man. He'd go from place to place and he'd con people. He'd sell the town on getting their kids a band to keep away from that evil horse racing and sitting on dam patch. But he met a beautiful woman, a librarian, Marion, the librarian, and he reformed. And you got to see it. You really got to see it. The music is delightful, but the story is absolutely tells wonders about Iowa and the Midwest. Um, Pick a little, talk a little, pick a little. The old jabbermouths. She had a library, Marion, who Henry Hill fell in love with, and it was left to her by someone who she might or might not have had an affair with. But so all the biddies in the neighborhood would pick a little, talk a little. It was terrific.
So did you
Anyway,
catch any baseball yesterday, sir?
I know the Mets lost. Their pitcher Severino had 8 2/3 of no hit ball or 8 1/3 of no hit ball. They ended up losing a heartbreaking game. And whenever the Mets, although I have, and I'm going to move this over just a little bit.
Go right ahead.
Well, I fucked it up. There you go. Hey, what can I say?
Okay.
Let's see if that'll
So
go
you
off
said the
on
Mets.
that.
So the Mets yesterday lost it to the Cubs 3-1. Oh, I'm gonna transfer over. You're not on screen anymore. I'm gonna go right over.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
Hey, why don't you call me back like we do?
You got it. And so
Okay.
we're gonna do this really quick, but then I'll go back and we're gonna Just redial him. This is what we do, especially if it works. We can only hope it works. All right, here we go. He does it. You don't need to hear the ring, folks. You don't need to hear the ring. We are back with Mr. Ralph in the car, mobile studio. There we go. You're back.
Whatever you want to call it.
All right. So yesterday, yes, the Mets lost 3-1 to the Cubbies. What else happened yesterday? Yankees got blown out by the Orioles 0-2, 2-0. You had the A's won over the Pirates 5-1. And
nice.
And
the
then,
A's are playing better ball than I expected them to.
Right. Wow, the Dodgers blew out the Diamondbacks.
Not a thrill for me.
Not a thrill for you. No love is gone. And then today's games, we got Yankees and Orioles again at 3:55. We've got San Francisco Red Sox at 4:10. We got Cubbies and Mets at 4:10. And I'm trying to see what else we got that's in your wheelhouse. And then Pirates at A's again.
Hey, Paulie, let's play show and tell.
Okay.
Okay?
Let's do that.
In maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a company that I was made aware of called Shoeless Joe, after Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Right.
And they manufactured gloves from all different eras. And you would buy the glove, very expensive, but worth having. I got to break in. Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
This is a glove that was the identical glove that they manufactured in 1956. All the specifications, and I was 10 years old. Now, at that time, it's a long story, but I wasn't a lefty. I was a righty. And I smashed up my finger pretty good. There you go. In my middle years, and could no longer get my hand in a right-hander's thrower's mitt, which was the left hand.
Right.
So I wanted to do something. I became a left-hander, and I threw the ball into a pitchback for hours, becoming a left-hander. And I broke this glove in, and the glove is now totally broken in, and I'm glad I did that. It took me a couple of years. I banged with a mallet, just to get it like it was when I was a kid.
What was it? Linseed oil, and we used to use rubber bands.
Oh,
and we used to do all that stuff.
At that time, but now they have leather preservers and leather optimizers and stuff.
You look like basically a lab scientist or chemist or something when you get all your chemicals out with your glove nowadays.
Right. But fortunately, it's broken in, and I get to pound on it every day. So there you go. That's one of my show and tell things. How about this one? Let's see if we can get it up there.
I know what that is, especially when it's in the mobile studio. That's a felony. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
That's how you clear traffic on a really congested highway? Wait, hold on.
Right. That's how you make friends with the world that really doesn't want to make friends that way. But this is a baseball bat, and it's signed by Campy Campaneris.
Oh, there you
go. And Campy Campaneris was another fellow from my youth who passed away was Craig Pearson. Craig was when I was doing tops, we were camp buddies, and we reunited. There you go. I'm going to give you a better view of the bat. We reunited, and he was the team doctor in spring training for the A's. And he got to know and befriend not only the A's, but the Giants and old players who didn't have medical benefits. He treated these guys. He treated Carl Hubble, for example. You'd be surprised how little Carl Hubble was offered in retirement from the Giants, for instance. Anyway, Campy and would visit us up in Alameda whenever he was in the area with Doc, and he stayed at our home, and we feed him and take him wherever he had to go. And that's one of my highlights of being a baseball fan. And I've got a broken bat autographed by Campy, which I keep in my car just in case. Never know. Okay. One other thing I wanted to share with you. Everybody talks to me about books. Here's a book. If you're an all-time baseball fan, here's a book. It's called Big Book of Baseball Lineups by Rob Nair. One of my guests mentioned that he's a friend of Bob. Can't think of who it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. He said, and I thought of this book. This is a book that has the lineups year to year of every team in baseball.
Wow.
So you can follow along year to year which teams traded somebody, which players were added to the team, and you go from year to year, and you can know, but team by team, year to year, you can know not from memory, not relying on memory, on relying on facts. And you could recall things and have arguments in your head settled. So it's another book I keep in the mobile studio, as it were. That's about it. That's all I have.
Oh, that's all right. No use in running out of steam so early in the show.
No, I'm not running out of steam because the guest in the second segment is, and we're going to talk more in this segment, but we're going to talk about Edge Studios a bit and what you've got going here. The guest is Jack DeGraw. Jack is one of the two Yankee mavens on the Comfortably Zoned radio network, which has transgressed. It is now the video network. So, and we're going to talk about the Yankees, old-time Yankees. We're going to go back to what I consider to be the greatest accomplishment by a team in any era, and that's the Yankees winning 5 world championships in a row in 1949 to 1953. The real heart of the golden age of baseball. We're going to talk about the teams. Eventually, we're going to cover all the years. We're going to start with 1951, and I'm going to give you my last piece of trivia for the day. It's my first piece of trivia. If anybody is looking at this cap and can tell me, the first person that's looking at this cap and can tell me what the significance is between the New York Yankees. This is an Oakland Oak cap, minor league cap. What's the significance of this cap and the New York Yankees?
All right,
First
I'm
person,
gonna go right to the chat line and see if anybody live watching has any ideas.
I'm sure
if you
that
have
if
any
they're
ideas,
alive,
if you're watching live today on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, or Africa TV, we appreciate you watching and coming along for the ride. What is the significance of the hat that's on Zig's head?
and the winner gets a book, Comfortably Zoned in Vat of Pine Tar, which I consider to be the most incredible book on modern day sports. But you know what? Others agree with me. The aforementioned Peter Golenbach, who wrote the forward, one of the people that wrote the forward, says the book was brilliant. Can you imagine Peter Golenbach saying your book is brilliant? Those lines will appear in the first paragraph of my obituary. I mean, really and truthfully.
No, I understand.
We wrote a book that, I might have said this before. George Will wrote a book that we took the premise from. Why? Because he wrote the dullest book and talked to the most uninteresting people about their lives in baseball. And that's what we wrote the book on. But the difference is our writing wasn't dull. George's writing, mostly. George took the book from basically all of the interviews, or not all of them, but the appropriate ones I did over the years at Comfortably Zoned, and made a book out of it. And the book is great. So if you're interested in entertaining yourself, go to Amazon. If you don't win a prize, go to Amazon. They'll send it to you in 3, 4, 5 days. $25. Definitely the best money you'll ever spend on literature. And George Grimm was going to be with us earlier on this morning, and he's experiencing more problems, like I said before. So let's hope for him. Good luck to Jerry Feidelberg as well. And again, that's gonna be the bane of my existence for the rest of my life. Watching my friends, relatives, teammates on the Comfortably Zoned network get old and dying, and that's part of it. So I don't know what to tell you.
Well, that's a nice cheerful note to end on. No, just kidding.
Well, you know,
but I get you.
It doesn't always have to be cheerful.
No, and you're right. But I'm almost afraid to log into social media anymore because I'm afraid to see someone sick or dying or something's going on. I think a lot of us, even once you get into your 50s, that starts to happen, and you start going, "Oh, I'm afraid to." But we got to move forward. We got to do what we do. But these guys will be fine because they have a great support system. We're all pulling them for them. So George and Jerry, you're in our hearts. So
absolutely, and both have been on this video network, and you've gotten to meet them, and you see what they're about. And sharing my friends with people will be sharing my friends with you, and the show will always be the highlight of what we have going. And again, you're to thank. Let's get on with what you've got going at Edge Studios.
Well, okay, that's a good segue. I'm gonna turn off everything I had going on there. All right, cool. What do I got going on? Well, we always have original content here at Ed Studios Online. You can check out everything we do at edstudiosonline.com. Uh, Also, these guys, when these produce their own shows, when they host their own shows, it goes straight to their social medias. So, like today, Ralph has his going right to his Comfortably Zone network on YouTube. So not only is it just push a button, we're streaming live there, but we were talking about he's going to go onto his Twitter. We have a Facebook page. We can simulcast simultaneously. That's why it's a simulcast. Simultaneously across all networks. So if you have a dream, and it, again, like Ralph said, it doesn't have to be baseball. I'm a writer and stand-up comedian. We have had other authors. We've had musicians. We've had even DJs express themselves in a positive, stress-free environment, if you will. So that's what we do here. It doesn't matter if you're in your own mobile studio, like Zig is in Alameda right now. It doesn't matter if you're like most of his guests that are sitting in somewhere around the world, anywhere in our country, anywhere around the globe. A lot of your guys are domestic. A lot of your guys come from the East Coast, and we're calling 3 hours difference. It's happening right here because digitally we can pipe you in. So again, if you have a dream, if you have a vision, we're here to help you try to make that dream become a reality at Ed Studios. If you want to, please just mention this podcast. We will waive the setup fee. You're saving about $50 on your setup, and plus we'll slide you into a seamless, even if you've never done this before, or even if you've come from something like what Ralph was doing before, which is an audio podcast, we can help you. It doesn't matter if you have zero experience or you're a seasoned pro. We can do it. So again, edstudiosonline@gmail.com. You can find us where all podcasting is heard and seen. And we also have a phone number for you, 650-503-3435. Again, that's 650-503-3435. If you have any questions, that's our number. So thanks, Zig.
I have a question. Paulie, I have a question to you.
Sure, go for it.
When we met, you were first the podcaster.
Yes.
How did it evolve to video podcasting?
Quite honestly, I was doing live shows because, again, I'm a writer and stand-up comedian. I was experimenting with streaming live comedy back about 2010-ish, 2011, and started doing it from different venues, including the Brainwash here in San Francisco. That evolved, and then, of course, it was an easier transition when everybody got into COVID because everybody was in lockdown, and that's where I literally put on my lab coat and really started experimenting with the technology. I wanted it to be easy enough that it wasn't just one camera, someone holding a phone. I wanted them to have all the bells and whistles. I wanted them to be able to bring in their own content. I wanted them to be able to interview people. I wanted them to be able to have graphics in lower thirds and all that stuff. And I wanted to make it simple. And so even with this setup, you literally control the board, all the cameras, all the graphics from an iPad. So once you've been trained, you literally just sit here and make button switches. So like, even when I go back to Zig in the mobile studio, it's just a push of the button like that. So we try to make it seamless. Once people get used to doing this, they still find room to grow, to do different things. So we really enjoy doing it. And I know I enjoy doing this with all my hosts. I usually just want to be a producer. I just usually want to be behind the scenes, a fly on the wall, if you will. But a lot of my producers and hosts have extended their hospitality to have me be a part of it. And like today, here I'm doing something I normally wouldn't do, which is co-hosting a podcast about baseball and life and Not a bad life. Not a bad life at all,
Not a
Zig.
bad life. And you get to wear a tie once in a while.
Yeah, so if I'm not going to go to court, I might as well wear my court clothes once in a while. So there you go. No, it's for
Well, bring
performance
your
time.
ladder in case you have to go to a higher court.
Yeah, to a higher court. Hey, believe me,
You're
every
the
time I go to court, I'm pretty high.
Oh, well,
I'm going to turn on my air conditioning. Kibitz for a second with yourself.
okay. What are you putting on?
The air conditioner. Did you hear me? The air conditioner. The air conditioner.
The air? I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
I'm putting on the air conditioner. The air conditioner.
Oh, okay. That's nice. I put one on in the car, station wagon, of course, between a van and a car. But that would screw up the sound, and that's not good. So, Paulie, we're going to get our first guest pretty soon. How close are we? Okay. Paul? You see, you did say kibitz with myself. I'd like to talk about all the folks, the businesses in Alameda that have been especially gracious to me in my transition in lifestyle.
All right. I'm ready for you.
I started to introduce these people last time, but I was a little too high to do that. I had to go on to just talking about the library. The public library in Alameda carries our book. Can't tell you how thrilled I am every time I walk in there to know that a book that I wrote was in the library. So I would like to thank Jane Chalisky, who was at that time the librarian of the city of Alameda, has since retired, but I can't thank her enough for the mindset of writing a book and having it in the library where you live. It's pretty cool.
And by the way, if you guys are wondering what Zig's got going on over his head, these are some random photos of his favorite city, Alameda. That's him enjoying.
Beautiful. Let me talk about that. Well, we've got me covered up there, covering it up.
No, so you must see it. I see. It looks like right there. It's the water shot with a boat. Beautiful.
Okay, I did take all of these pictures, and one of my hobbies is photography, and I live in the kind of place that you want to get pictures. So if you like these pictures, or if you like photography by Ralph Tycho in general, subscribe to my my Facebook page, and I put pictures of my environment virtually every day. So enjoy that. But one of the Facebook groups that publishes my photography is The Beauty of Alameda. And if you want to Google that or go to Facebook and hook into that, you'll see a great deal of my photography over the years. And I want to give those people some appreciation, because if my feeling is that if you administrate a group, you have to be fair. And this is a very fair group, and they include all the photographers that contribute in Alameda. Want to talk about for a second the best dispensary, to my knowledge, that I ever encountered, a 420 dispensary. And that is right here on Park Street in Alameda. It's called Park Social. And they have a great combination. They have empathy and prices. Ambiance and prices. I didn't mean to say empathy. You're the guy with the empathy, Paulie. And you do have it. And believe me, I'm grateful because you treat everybody that you deal with as a human. And I know you have that tie on because you're dealing with somebody in court that doesn't necessarily treat everybody like they're human. So I wish you luck today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's not happening until next month, but absolutely. No, I'm looking snazzy. I'm just trying to look snazzy.
Wow. Then you put the tie on in my honor, I'd like to think.
Yeah, there you go.
Or you have another show coming up that needs snappiness.
Oh, no, again, matter of fact, I'm performing tonight in San Francisco, so we will see how that works.
Tell us about when and where.
Tonight, 7 p.m. at the Mint Karaoke Lounge in San Francisco, and I should know exactly where that is. It is located at here, hold on. I got it. That's how good I am. I should know. It's called the Comedy Takeover at the Mint Karaoke Lounge. Tonight at 1942 Market Street. That's 1942 Market Street in San Francisco. Showtime is 7 p.m. Doors open at 6. There's a 2-drink minimum. Performers include Manny Cabrera, Robin Brennan, Trish Pandya, Sean Nichols, hosted by Ashley Tomajan and headlined by Howard Stone, with myself performing, and the host of the next show, which is Joe Mama. She'll be there. She's the producer of that show. Again, Comedy Takeover at the Mint Karaoke Lounge, 1942 Market Street in San Francisco. There you go.
And by the way, I did some comedy back in the 80s.
Yes, you did.
And one of my associates was Howard Stone.
There you go. So
say hello to him for me. Invite him on the show if he'd like. And it'd be nice to catch up with him after all this time.
Absolutely.
Good. Are we about ready to try to get Jack on the air?
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour. Were we going 12:15 or were we going top of the hour? What are we doing?
Let's go 12:15. Let's go 12. Let's put it at the top of the hour.
All right. So let me see here. What we're going to do then, we're going to do our little transition here, folks. We're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back after this, folks.
All right, guys, it's time to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
We are back with Zig in the Zone. And there's Zig.
Hey, there's Zig, and I did not fuck up the controls while you gave me the opportunity.
No, that's cool. And then we're going to mirror a little bit here. Jack's joining us. I'm going to change things a little bit over. Sorry, folks. We're doing the Wrong view. There we go. Jack is doing the walk through the house again. We're going to get the view of Jack's house.
Okay. But you don't have the jazz today.
No background jazz.
So I don't know if I should apologize or you're probably glad of that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So joining us, Jack DeGraw. How you doing, bud?
Good. How are you, Paul?
Very well. Good to see you, my man.
Joining us. You've been on before. And Jack, you've been an integral part of the Comfortably Zoned podcast network when it was just audio. And we're thrilled to have you. And you're becoming a regular talking about the Yankees. And let's start it off. What's been going on with the Yankees lately?
And when he does that, can you do me a favor? Angle your camera down, Zig, for a little bit. You're looking like Kilroy there for a second.
Okay.
All right, there we go. He's going to grab onto his little mobile studio. There we go. Looking good. Now you're a little low, but that's okay. I don't think I'll ever say that to Zig in his life. You're just a little low. Usually he's a little too high. All right, so here we go. Jack, tell us about what's going on.
Well, the Yankees are 19-11, and I'll tell you, coming out of spring, I didn't know how they were going to do. You know, there was a lot of question marks with Stanton and Rizzo and Rodon, and Stanton over the winter, he seemed to lose a lot of weight, and he cut down on the muscles, and he's doing pretty well. And Rodon's been a big surprise. He's pitching outstanding, and his velocity has actually went up. 2 or 3 miles per hour. And Rizzo, I was thinking about the head injury he had last year and the concussion, and it doesn't seem to be bothering him so far. So really, they're 19-11, and things are looking up.
Okay. Jack, do you recognize this cap and the significance of it for the Yankees?
Is that a Highlanders cap? I can't see it.
It's in the sunlight. Tip your head down a little bit. There you go. Perfect. Can you
see? It's an Oakland Oak cap, and I'll give it away because
Billy Martin and Casey Stengel.
Billy Martin and Casey Stengel, 1949 Oakland Oaks. And they had one more guy who was traded from the Yankees shortly thereafter. He was brought up, and he turned out to be a superstar in the American League. Jackie Jensen, who was an All-American football player at Cal, and one of my heroes as a kid growing up. My heroes weren't necessarily associated with any one baseball team. I mean, I loved the Giants. I really loved the Yankees, but not the organization in those days. And the Dodgers, they were the bums. But all three of those aforementioned people were associated with the Oakland Oaks in 1948. I think I said 49. Originally, I was mistaken. Casey started managing in 1949. And the hardest thing that Casey had to do was, first of all, he had managed 2 or 3 different teams in his career. He was a Dodger manager at one time. I think he might have been a Brave manager. I could be mistaken about that. But he didn't have a great reputation when he came to the Yankees. But I'll tell you how he proved himself. It was Mickey Mantle's first year and Joe DiMaggio's last year. And Casey was the manager when the transformation of the Yankees from Joe's team to Mickey's team took place. And off the top of my head, I want to ask you, what did you see in the comparison of Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle, Jack DeGraw?
Well, I think with the Mickey, his teammates loved him. You know, he was a fan favorite. He was a favorite of the players, and Joe D was just revered as a terrific ball player, what he was. But they were both outstanding in their own right. And the thing that made them so good too was they had a lot of outstanding players with them, and maybe somebody who's overlooked, and it might sound crazy to say, was Yogi Berra. They both played with Yogi.
Not at all overlooked. I mean, Yogi won more rings than anybody in baseball history. Yogi was terrific. Another person that you might consider to be overlooked was Phil Rizzuto. Phil Rizzuto was a terrific shortstop, and he had terrific players as second base combination. He had Billy Martin was the second baseman, but before that, before he went in the service, man, I'm blanking out. Who was the Yankees second baseman before he went in? Slick fielding number 42, Jerry Coleman. And Jerry Coleman, when he went in the service, Billy Martin won the job at second base. And that's to be noted. Billy Martin had one of the great World Series of all time when he distinguished himself hitting, and he made a spectacular fielding play when a pop fly went up and no one reacted but Billy Martin, who came racing across the field to make a catch. That's what I remember most about the early days. How about you?
In that series, I think it was 52 or 53.
I think Billy it was 52.
Okay, Billy went 12 for 24 in that series. And I believe before the World Series, they used to do the matchups, the first baseman they met. And, they'd always say Jackie Robinson had the big advantage over Billy. And it fired Billy up, and he really turned it on when he had to. Because, Billy was a terrific Yankee, especially in the postseason.
Billy Martin was represented by the same person that Jackie Robinson was. So they became very good friends. And I wish I had it for Paulie to post, but it's a picture of those two together, Billy Martin showing the catch, posing for the catch, and Jackie Robinson standing over him. Billy Martin had a much better World Series than Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those years when they beat the Dodgers. I mean, the one year, I believe, I get the years mixed up, 52 or 53, the Dodgers won 110 games. They had one of the best teams ever. And, right. The Yankees always seemed to come through when they had to. And I think the best quote was the Dodger pitcher, Billy Lowe's. They asked him before the series, who do you think is going to win? He said, the Yankees in 6. So,
He was a Dodger. He was also the guy who said he lost the ground ball in the sun.
Oh, and is this the picture you're talking about, Zig? I'm sorry.
I can't see it on my screen.
Okay, I tried.
Is it with Billy Martin looking up at Jackie Robinson?
But they look like it's a pose. They look like it's a pose. Billy Martin's down, kind of bending down like he's about to scoop it up.
Yes, and that is an iconic picture. Billy Martin, talk a little bit about Billy Martin overall. Um, Jack, your thoughts about if I just mentioned Billy Martin? What's the first thing you catch up with?
Well, he was a terrific manager and a terrific player, and he got along with Joe D. He wasn't intimidated by Joe D. I think he, Joe was the big Dago, and Billy was the little Dago,
Right?
and Billy really loved being a Yankee, and the fans loved him, and he was just he was like one of us, and that's what he and if he didn't die in the car accident, he would have been the Yankee manager again. I think he was there 5 or 6 times, but nobody loved the Yankees more than Billy Martin.
Steinbrenner claimed to love the Yankees more. He was wrong. Steinbrenner made Billy crazy.
Yes.
All Billy ever wanted to do was manage the Yankees, and he had some demons. Billy did, and he wasn't quite the typical Yankee manager, but he was a great coach and a great manager. Let me go back to Rod Carew when he coached Minnesota. Considered Billy Martin to be like a brother. Rod Carew named his godson, named Billy as a godson to one of his kids. And he absolutely broke down in tears when that happened. Now, there's been a lot said about the Reggie interaction with Reggie Jackson and what have you. But anybody that says that Billy Martin had an ounce of prejudice was full of shit. Billy Martin was just a great person.
Well, Billy wanted to win. And I think the thing with George wanted to be the top banana, and George couldn't figure out why the Yankees couldn't win every game. And, that's,
George had a football mentality. You play 12, 15 games a year, there's a possibility you could win every game. But you could be a great team and lose. You got to lose 60 if you're a great team.
Yeah.
And George could not understand that. And George had no sense of humor. That's another thing.
Well, narcissistic people very seldom do.
Yes, that's true. George, to bring in a current politician, George Steinbrenner, and I got this from Peter Golenbach, their resemblances as human beings were absolutely uncanny. They were of a mindset, and they're not good humans. How about that?
Well, I mean, I have to say, Ralph, when I met George, he was very nice to me on 5 or 6 occasions, and he was good to the fans. When they used to go up for autographs and stuff. But that's when he was getting in his later years. And there was some great stories by Peter, and I'm not going to ruin it by telling it, but get Peter's book. And I mean, some of the stories about the Wild, High, and Tight is one of the best books I ever read, and that was by Peter.
Right. And wasn't that a relief pitcher, Goose Gossage, that they refer to in that title?
Well, the one about, because Peter wrote a book about Billy Martin. He wrote 2, but the one had 500 and some pages, and it was just a terrific book. And I know Goose wanted to get away from the Yankees because George was driving him nuts. I remember being at spring training one time. I come up to Goose. He signed a ball for me, and then Usher gave me a picture. I go, Goose, could you sign this again? He goes, if George sees the guy ask you for your autograph, he'll fire him. He goes, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No, that's just, that's just the way it was."
Well, he's what my Uncle Boris would have called a jerk in the best New York accent. Uncle Boris was from Brooklyn, and he never left Brooklyn from the time his parents brought him over here as a kid, for as far as I know, ever, except to go to his bungalows, which he had in Rockaway, and he'd rent bungalows out. And but Uncle Boris, if I ever write a book about the most interesting character I've ever met, could be Uncle Boris, and he never played baseball. So,
well, Ralph, I had relatives in my town, Netcon, and they never left Netcon. I mean, right. They didn't go 2 miles out of their house, and you try to explain that to people, and it's like, I mean, my uncle got married, and it's like they were going on a honeymoon, and they got 3 miles out of town. They go, "We don't want to go anywhere. Let's turn around and go back home." So that's just the way it was, A lot of people loved their house.
When my mother got married and started traveling, he didn't even meet the husband yet, my dad. And they were at a get-together, and he said to him, "What kind of a jerk wants to travel? We got it all here. We got it all here in Brooklyn." But so his personality was out there. But yes, people did not travel. And, times are changing too. I don't think Uncle Boris ever lived to get up in an airplane. Sure he didn't. So, we've come a long way as a society, giving us options to go different places. And to be perfectly honest, I am so delighted that I got to meet and travel to different people in different states over a lifetime. Because if all I had was New York to judge the way the world was, although it's the second greatest city in the country, Alameda's the greatest, according to me. I miss New York, and I miss Paulie and I were talking about Broadway, but take us back, if you will, Jack, to when there were 3 teams in New York.
Well, the interesting thing from I believe from 1948 till for 10 years, the World Series was never outside New York. Either the Giants were in it, the Dodgers were in it, and the Yankees were in it. And I mean,
and that goes to 64 if you make the Los Angeles Dodgers instead of the Brooklyn Dodgers. They won in 59. So that streak gets an asterisk. But can you imagine growing up in a city, and I did, where the World Series was played every year? As a kid, you consider it to be a birthright.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a magical time. I would just love to go back for a few days and just be, to experience that. I mean, the Yankees winning almost every year, and the Dodgers were always great, and the Giants had some good years, and a couple of years they were a little off. But thank God the Dusty Rhodes and Larry Jansen, all those guys, they swept the Indians in '54. But it must have been just a magical time. I mean, it's
oh yeah. And don't forget that the Giants, although they lost to the Yankees in '51, they won the pennant. And there was a very famous play, and I know Jack knows about it, where Mickey Mantle was called off on a fly ball. This was in the World Series, and by Joe DiMaggio. Tell us about that and who hit the ball.
Well, Willie Mays hit the ball, and Mickey was getting, it was like in right, right center field, and I think Casey told Mickey if he could get the ball, get the ball. But Joe D, being Joe D, he called him off, and Mickey stepped in a drainage, and he tore up his knee. And the interesting thing, when he went to the hospital, he was in his hospital room with his dad. So
yeah, that was where his dad, who had developed some sort of bone cancer, was to die from that. That his and that changed Mickey's personality. A love lost in life changed Mickey's personality. But it took a long time for the fans to get behind Mickey. I think it was not until 1956 when Mickey won, I think he won a Triple Crown, the most valuable player. Triple Crown, am I correct?
Yes, yeah.
And he won over the fans then. And I want to say one thing. You said, in talking about Mickey and Joe, well, Mickey was loved and Joe was kind of this, that. Joe was loved by his teammates when he played. And his big irk with Casey, they never got along. And Casey didn't treat him like the god that he expected to be treated as.
Well,
Joe
didn't
D.
Casey put Joe D at first base for a game?
Oh yeah, he never got over that, Joe. And to the best of my knowledge, when they appeared together at Old Timers Day and what have you, they were still cold till the day either one of them died, cold towards each other. That now, tell me too about isn't it interesting that Willie hit that ball?
Yeah, I mean, the three iconic center fielders, and don't forget the Duke. We can't forget Duke Snyder. I
Absolutely.
mean, and if, correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph. I think in the '51 series, the Giants won the first game, and then the second game got rained out. And they said the Giants had momentum, and they think maybe with the rain out, it gave the Yankees a little bit time to regroup, because the Giants were on a roll. I mean, after what they did to the Dodgers and Bobby Thompson's home run, it was.
Well, you have to remember what the Giants went through to win the pennant, and how much. I mean, there were 13 games out in July, if not August, and they ended up winning the pennant on Bobby Thompson's historic home run off Ralph Branca.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny story about that. Ralph Branca was pissed at that for the rest of his life, because he found out and knew that Bobby Thompson was getting signs. They were stealing signs, DeRocher was, from the clubhouse with a telescope owned by a utility player named Bob Shentz. And Bob Shentz took that back from the Navy, and he brought it in one day and set it up. And sure enough, from that long distance clubhouse, he could read signs with that telescope. And that wasn't just in the World Series. I don't even know if they were using that. It was through the pennant race. Now, a lot of players didn't want to know what was coming. A lot of players did. And there was a book called, something green grass or whatever, written by a sports writer who interviewed people and brought it all out in the open that they knew what was coming. But my thought was the Giants expended an incredible amount of energy just to win the pennant. And I have a feeling that that they shot their wad, as it were, on that.
Well, I'll tell a little story. I wrote to Andy Pofko. I used to write to a lot of the old time players, and Andy Pofko was playing left field for the Dodgers that day. And I asked him, I said, when Thompson hit the ball, did you think it was going out? And he said, no, I didn't think it was going out. He goes, I guess kept drifting back. And then, I hit the wall, and he said, I think at Ebbets Field I would have caught it. So that's
right.
That's
they called that a Chinese home run. Now that was obviously a slur that the expression wouldn't have gotten out today, but a cheap home run hit like Thompson's home run. But
Dusty Rhodes.
Right. But those dimensions were the same for both teams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Polo Ground, I never seen a game in the Polo Grounds. When I went Old Timers Day in 60-40 Yankee Stadium, I looked back and I seen the Polo Ground. But what a unique ballpark that was. That must have been a terrific place to see a game. Did you ever get a chance to go there, Ralph? Or?
Oh, I did. Like I was telling Paulie before, with my grandfather when I was 4.5. And not only did I get to go to the Polo Grounds that year, but my pop, should be everybody's pop took me to the Polo Grounds first, and then all three stadiums, Yankee Stadium and Ebbets Field. Okay, all two, the remaining stadiums. Now, my Yankee story was that we didn't often sit right behind the plate, but we did that day that I went. And my grandfather kept saying, this is Joe DiMaggio's last year. You will have no other chance but to see him this year. And believe it or not, I remember the look in my grandfather's eye, and I remember him pointing out center field. Remember, I'm 4.5, 5 years old. Next, he took me to Ebbets Field. Now, as I mentioned about Uncle Boris, my relatives all lived in Brooklyn, except for my grandfather in the Bronx. And his sisters tried to make me into a Dodger fan. And I remember my Aunt Bertha saying, but he's our Jackie. You can't root for anybody else but Jackie. And so that, and her sister, my Aunt Sunny, lived in one of the apartments right behind Ebbets Field. So we'd go to Ebbets Field and we'd say, that's your aunt's, he'd point up, that's your Aunt Sunny's apartment. How I didn't become a Dodger fan is a miracle, because I love these two women. They were my grandfather's sisters, but in essence, my aunts. And I'll never forget, he's our Jackie. People in Brooklyn love Jackie. And it's my contention that the great experiment by Branch Rickey could not have taken place in any other venue but Ebbetsfield and any other city in Ebbetsfield, Brooklynites didn't care if you were green. And as we know in history, that wasn't the same in every city. As a matter of fact, Jackie got an incredible amount of Soros, which trouble. Soros is a Jewish word. I'm teaching poorly Jewish. The Soros came from cities like predominantly like Philadelphia
and Chapman.
And they treated him like shit. Unbelievable. And he made a deal with Branch Rickey that 2 years you got to take everything they dish out, and after 2 years you can retaliate. And he did Jackie. So
well, if you remember, Ralph, I think it was a 1970 World Series at Cincinnati when he threw out the first ball, and Jackie was only 50, 51 years old, and he looked awful. You know, he looked 70, 75 years old. I mean, the abuse what he went through and what he had to take was just, hate. When people hate, they hate, and it's just, a terrible thing. And it probably, ended his life 20 some years soon. His wife is still around, God bless her, but
102 years old. She made a clubhouse appearance at Shea Stadium, and that was recently, and that was heartwarming.
Yeah.
It was just to see her alive, still looking classy at 102. And I might remind you, looking 75, you don't have to be old to look at 75. And you don't have to be old, certainly, to look 77, which I'm glad I am, because I would not have the memories that I have. Not only did I see the Giants play in the Polo Grounds, I saw the Titans play in the Polo Grounds.
I was going to ask you that.
And later, the Mets played their first few games in the Polo Grounds. So, and it's different when you're in New York, as you know. You get to travel the subways as a kid with more freedom than kids have today in the fanciest of neighborhoods. We didn't know from crime and stuff like that. Well, we knew it was there, but so we got to go. Marty Rose, and I want to shout out to him. He's struggling. Marty I'll say it, he's got ALS. Developed ALS in his late 70s. Unbelievable. Yeah. We were shocked. He was shocked. It's horrible. It's a horrible disease, and he's keeping his spirits. He tunes into every game, every Met game, certainly. But it's hard. That's another one of we're talking to Paulie before about the Comfortably Zoned family is by nature of the beast experiencing mortality. And Marty was one of those that I neglected to call, to recall earlier in the day, or earlier in the show. But Marty was my best friend in second grade. We lived next building over. When my family moved to Northridge, there was a new condominium co-op, not condominium complex, in 1952. I lived in apartment 201 in my building, and he lived in apartment 201 in his building. And we did everything together. And there were many acquaintances that we had growing up. But I was closest with Marty. I walked to school every day with Marty and Alan Mayer. I walked from Jackson Heights to Newtown High School, which was about a mile. A mile is a long way in the winter, in the frigid winter.
Yes.
And so there's kind of a bonding there, going to a place that we didn't want to be, high school.
I know the feeling, Ralph. I hated school.
And right, and to wait, like I had great instructions and great moments of education sporadically sprinkled in with a bunch of teachers that didn't want to be working there, that were making next to nothing, that the teachers union hadn't yet come in. And but I got some great education in spurts. Do you mind if I interject and talk about one of my great educational experiences was, and I sure like to get in touch with her, and there's a neighborhood Facebook group. No one's ever been able to find out where she was. She was a teacher in Newtown, and she taught poetry as a means to develop an ideology and to teach one to perform, to memorize poems, two in particular that I'll tell you about, and then perform them in class. That's all my life was made. That I knew I could read at that point, and I knew that I could appreciate poetry and how it formed one. The two poems were Victus by William Ernest Henley, and I'm not gonna recite the whole thing, but out of the night that covered me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. Now, if that doesn't touch base with forming an ideology, I don't know what does. Combined with another poem that she had us read and memorize, it was called Richard Cory, and I can't think of the name of who wrote it, but Simon and Garfunkel sung the song, Richard Cory, to that poem. Not exactly, but to that poem. And the gist of the poem was this: whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement stared at him, the poor. He was a gentleman from soul to crown, clean, favored, and imperially thin, and he was rich, yet richer than a king. And on we worked, something like on we worked and struggled for our bread, and they admired Rick Cory, who was this millionaire. And then Richard Cory went out one day and put a bullet through his head. So my point of these two analogies was that in the one, you have to have an empathy for the people. And in the second one, you have to have an empathy for yourself and not feel that because there's money involved, people are living a better life than you. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world.
And you never know with people what's going on in their heads
No.
and to admire them for their money and their richness. Instead, we don't know what Richard Corey did for the people. We don't know what he did for his family. But, he was unhappy in the sense that the poor people couldn't recognize Richard Corey for what he was. A flawed human, like we all are, and not to be admired for the wrong reasons. So her name was Miss Drucker. She had legs that went all the way up to Canada, and she liked me. She and as a high school kid, that's all you need to be a great teacher. But she gave me the ability to memorize, and and I had to recite these poems in front of my classmates. For the first time, I was performing, and I wasn't intimidated. And I could talk. I could meet people. You mentioned you communicated with Andy Pafko. My God, word! I remember when he platooned with Wes Covington in left field at one time for the Braves. Later on, and I would, every chance I get, anybody I found the phone number to. Rod Keneal of the Mets was in the hospital with a knee problem. It's Lenox Hill Hospital. My grandfather had stayed there for one reason or another, and I knew the phone number. And I called him up one day. I called the hospital. May I speak with Rod Keneal, please? And here's a guy laying up in bed, nothing to do but chat. He chatted with me for a long time. and years later, he was living in Kansas City, I think, and a bartender or doing something. And I called him back years later, and I said, I don't know if you remember this conversation, but you were in the hospital when you had your knee operated. He goes, whoa, I do. And he remembered the conversation.
Wow.
It made me think that I could call anybody and make some sort of an impression. And making no impression, I get to hear their voice. Sam Huff lived in Flushing when he played with the New York Giants, the football Giants. He was a great player. And I called him up once, and I spoke to Sam Huff. Mostly when I call back, I get to speak to his wife. Sam's not here, blah, blah, blah. But, but I spoke to Sam Huff. I spoke, under the same circumstances, I spoke to who was drafted out of Utah, who was a quarterback with the Giants.
Was it Lee Grosscup or?
Yes, it was Lee Grosscup. I would communicate with him. That's why I love talking with you. There's not a thing that goes by. I was talking with Lee Grosscup. I'd call up, and it basically was the podcast before there was a podcast. Because I wanted to know I didn't want to know about their statistics. And if you note that in 12 years of doing this, 3,200 podcasts between myself and the podcasters at Comfortably Zone, statistics rarely come up. What makes us a great podcast network is that we talk to the players, the coaches, the authors. We talk about the humanity. What was it like for you? And that's what I'm proud of. And that's what I got from those two poems. And it made my life.
Well, sorry, Ralph, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you know Miss Drucker, I'm sure she got married. She was a knockout, uh, as many of those young teachers were. Miss Friedman from junior high school 145. Um, I was in love. I mean, she was an English teacher, and she could communicate, and that's all I knew was English. I mean, I got 19 in Spanish on my report card. 65 was passing. In order for me to graduate from Newtown, which was no big honor, I had to get my grade point average up to 65, including the 19 points, the 19 that I was given by Hazel Artist in Spanish, because she'd always ask me a question in Spanish, and I'd say, no comprende.
Well, you knew some Spanish.
And the class would break up. Sorry, no comprende. That was so that's why I got 19. But not to be outdone by Hazel. So it wasn't just Spanish that I wasn't any good at. It was everything. So, but I managed to get my point grade up as a super senior to graduate, because I took classes like shop towards the end, and got good grades in shop. Not because I could do anything in shop, but because I kept my mouth shut and fulfilled my promise to the teacher. I'll give you anything you need to graduate, said Mr. Banner at Newtown. He says, just keep your goddamn mouth shut.
That must have been tough, Ralph.
Believe me. Believe me. And it's only recently that by necessity I've developed a filter. So I don't say whatever comes into my head, no matter what. So I will match you as far as being a poor student, Jack DeGraw. But I'll ask you, what was your favorite educator?
We had a teacher like Mr. Denmead. And, he was also like the football coach, but he was just a really nice guy. I mean, I never had a father or anything. And I wouldn't say he was sort of like a father figure and stuff. And he was just a really nice guy. He was a singer. And where we lived, and in the back of the house, somebody had wrote JD and carved it into the wall, Jack DeGraw. But no, it was his brother, Jack Denmead. So, I mean, he was always like one of my favorite teachers, and like I say, I really didn't like school. I didn't get in a lot of trouble. I'm like, if I'm not interested in something, I'm not interested. I mean, I just have passions that I care a great deal about, and I'm going to be good at. But if I'm not interested in something, I just, totally just don't care. And I think the thing is nowadays, Ralph, like what you were bringing up. It's not what you got if you appreciate everything you have. I mean, look, I can get up and walk my dog and ride my bike and play ball and go to the ball game, and I have a terrific life. I don't envy anybody. And a lot of people have told me, he said, you really know how to live. And I said, you're damn right I do. So.
Right, because you only get one crack at it.
That's it.
A lot of people that, and it's coincides with believing in heaven and an afterlife and what have you. I feel that sort of shit cheapens the life that we live in now. That, it'll be much better. God will provide this, that, and the other thing. We'll all go to heaven and be happy. Now, live your life and be happy as you see it, whatever makes you happy. If it's not against the law and if it doesn't hurt anybody, then God bless you.
Well, one of the things, sorry, Ralph, one of the things I learned, I mean, my mom was 26, my dad was 28, I was 2.5 when my father died.
Oh, wow.
So it made me realize that, you're not going to be here forever. So, the future's now. The future's now. You do what you have to do. You enjoy your life now, not in 5 years, not in 50 years. You enjoy your life now. Like I say, if you're not hurting anybody, what's the big deal?
Jack, was there anything in particular that you learned from Mr. Denny that sticks out in your head?
He was just not really. He was just a nice man and somebody you respected. And I remember one time he was saying, "Oh my God, this was like 1968 or something." He goes, "We're getting to be a world of specialized idiots, where we can only do one thing and we can't think for ourselves." And I think he was right.
Right. You know what they should do idyllically, and it's a matter of cost, but they should test the student coming in and find out what his needs are for education. It's absolutely worthless, other than it teaches you to think, learning algebra if you're never going to use it again. Learning Spanish, and I wish I had learned Spanish, because as my job, it wasn't work, it was play. I was employed by Tops, as you know, Jack, and I think you know, Paulie.
Oh yeah.
I got to sign players, go all through the minor leagues on the West Coast, and sign players to their Tops contract. So when they reached the majors, Tops had their permission to use the picture on baseball cards. So, but I got to meet a lot of Spanish people, players, that I had no way of communicating with. And had I just learned, hey, ¿qué pasa? I had to learn that from George Carlin.
Yeah.
¿Qué pasa? I'm the hippy dippy weatherman. But that was all. Hey, Paul, let's break in and hear Paulie's voice. I mentioned George Carlin. Tell me about your podcast partner and your friend.
Absolutely, if I can get to that point. And we're getting close to the end of the show, believe it or not, guys. Do you believe it?
That's why I wanted to hear from you.
Yeah, Patrick Carlin was an awesome friend for a number of years. He passed not this last April, but the April before, and he actually passed on my birthday. And what a unique individual. I know that I can't think of George without thinking of Patrick, and Patrick without thinking of George, but Patrick really kind of really taught me a lot of things in my life. Actually, he helped me on so many levels that I hope he knows on some level that how he helped me and keep me grounded. He was in upstate New York and spent his last year in Hollywood with his sons. But what a dynamic individual. You could tell everyone in that family definitely has that Carlin point of view, I guess, and cadence. And so you could hear that in Patrick as well as George. But yeah, I will miss him sorely. One thing I wanted to do is, I know that we're getting close to, and if you ever want to listen to anything that Patrick did, check out what I've done before, which is called The Edge of Insanity, and you can find that on where podcasts are streaming, iTunes, stuff like that. One thing I want to try, and this
where's your stuff archived?
Where's my stuff archived? A lot of it is archived on my website, which is paulbrumbaugh.com, or you can go to iTunes and look up The Edge of Insanity. But again, you can look up The Edge of Insanity, and there's places like Stitcher, TuneIn, all that stuff. It is archived. It's also going to be archived on our website at one point, which is edgestudiosonline.com, but it is not, because I'm a one-man band here, and I'm doing everything at once. One thing I'm going to share with you guys, let me see if I can go back to your cameras before I do it. Let me do the switch. You were talking about it early on in the show. We're wrapping up the show right now. I want to thank Jack for hanging out with us, as well as you, Zig. I always love hanging out with everybody here.
I just want to make sure, because Paulie and I know we're having fun. Jack, you're having fun too.
No, it's always a lot of fun, Ralph. I appreciate all you've done for me.
Well, not what I've done for you; it's what you've done for the network, and
what you've done for others. We've enjoyed your content, so thank you for doing what you do, Jack.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, now here's a little something. You were talking about it early on in the show. You had your mitt. You had your mitt up. And you were talking about how you had to break it in. And then you were talking about how you had to teach yourself how to pitch or how to throw left-handed, correct?
Yes, indeed. And how to catch through that left-hander's mitt, because it's not easy adjusting. But, I didn't suddenly become the second baseman for the Cubs, which would have been much more difficult being a left-hander. But it was worth it. And I can't.
And you did that. And you did that with the aid of a thing called a pitchback, correct?
Right. It's an automatic, like a net that's so designed that you can throw it in a certain way where you get the ball back from the pitch back in relationships to how you throw it.
Right. So some of these people are now talking about on Thursdays, they show old pictures. They have throwbacks. They call it a Throwback Thursday. So we're going to try something a little bit different with Zig in the Zone today. We're going to do a Pitchback Tuesday instead of a Throwback Thursday. This pitchback goes back to 1962, right here in the San Francisco Bay, World Series Game 7, Yankees at Giants. Let's see. Let's spin that wind on that newsreel, and let's see what happens, folks.
Candlestick Park, new home of the Giants, who came west in 1958.
We'll see if this is the footage.
A West Coast storm has Candlestick Park awash.
Look at the water.
It's D-Day at Candlestick. 6 months of baseball now spirals to a climax in just one game.
Both starters, Ralph Terry of the Yankees and the Giants' Jack Sanford, were sharp. And the game was scoreless until the top of the fifth. Then singles by Muscarin and Clete Boyer, and a walk to Terry, loaded the bases with nobody out, and Tony Kubek was the hitter.
Ground ball hit to the shortstop. They're going for 2 to second, 1 out, back to first for the double play. Bill Skowron comes in to score, and the Yankees go out in front 1-0.
It was still 1-0 in the bottom of the 7th when Willie Mays came to the plate.
Tom Tresh goes over, he makes a one-handed catch.
Tresh racing into the corner, he's got it, a one-handed catch.
Willie McCovey was up next against Ralph Terry.
Here's the 1-1 pitch. He swings and hits a drive into deep center. Mantle is chasing it in deep center. He can't get it all the way to the fence. Here's McCovey going into second. He's going to try for 3. Throw is not in time.
McCovey was stranded at third. His next at-bat against Terry would decide the World Series.
All right, that's your Pitchback Tuesday, guys. There's your Pitchback Tuesday. What did you think?
Tremendous. Paulie, great job of producing.
I'm trying to do my best. It's that time. We've gone into extra innings. Again, Ralph, send off Jack like only you can.
Jack, you're my friend, and I'm appreciative.
Well, thank you, Ralph. I appreciate it. I'm lucky to have you as a friend. And, Paul, thank you for all your help. But let me say one thing. Rest in peace, Fritz Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I did a few podcasts with Chris when he was in better shape. He suffered from Alzheimer's disease the past few years. I did one podcast in particular with him and Marty Appel that they talk about their experiences together, and when the moment that Chris Fritz rather Peterson became the pitcher with the lowest earned run average in history at Yankee Stadium. And they it was Marty Appel that they both agreed on that gave Fritz the information that he had earned that distinction, and that was cool. This whole podcasting experience is very cool, and especially on a day like today. Thank you for being here, Jack. And next time we'll talk a little bit about Joe Pepitone and that famous day when he made my grandfather happy and hit 2 home runs in a doubleheader. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you were there.
May 18th, 1969. The Yankees won 3-1 and 1-0.
And on that, Jack,
up.
tell us how to keep up with everything that you're doing, sir.
Thanks.
How do we keep up with everything that you're doing, Jack?
Oh, you can just, check. I'm on Facebook. So, anybody wants to message me or, talk, I'm always available. I'll talk sports 24/7.
There you go.
And you could thank me for convincing that Jack to put his picture on Facebook. Am I correct?
There you go. All right, guys. For myself, the Zigzag Man, we are out, bud. You guys have a great rest of your week.
We always do.
Have a great rest of your week, everybody. We'll see you next week here in the zone.
In the zone. Thank you again.